The rope bit into Rebecca Garrett's wrists with such fierce intensity that she wondered if her hands would ever regain feeling, assuming she lived long enough to find out. She had been bound to this gnarled oak tree for what felt like an eternity, the rough bark pressing against her spine through the thin fabric of her traveling dress. And the October night air of 1882. Oklahoma had grown so cold that her breath came out in visible puffs of white vapor. The three men who had ambushed her stagecoach that afternoon had left her here miles from anywhere recognizable, taking everything of value, including her father's pocket watch, the one thing she had left of him after his death 6 months prior. They had laughed as they rode away, their voices carrying on the wind, discussing whether anyone would find her before the coyotes did. Rebecca had screamed until her throat was raw, had pulled against her restraints until blood trickled down her arms, and had prayed more fervently than she ever had in her 22 years of life. The driver of the stagecoach lay dead somewhere back on the trail, shot before he could even reach for his rifle, and the other passenger, an elderly woman heading to visit her daughter, had been left tied up in a different location entirely. Rebecca had no idea if the woman was even still alive. The thieves had separated them deliberately, making rescue that much more difficult for anyone who might come looking. As the night deepened and the temperature continued to drop, Rebecca had drifted in and out of consciousness, her body trying to conserve what little warmth it could generate. She dreamed of her childhood home in Missouri, of her mother's voice singing lullabies, of Sunday dinners with family gathered around the table. She dreamed of the teaching position she had been traveling to accept in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a small but growing town that desperately needed someone to educate their children. That future seemed impossibly distant now, a fantasy that belonged to someone else entirely. When dawn began to break across the prairie, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Rebecca forced herself to cry out again. Her voice was barely more than a croak, her throat damaged from hours of screaming, but she had to try. If someone was out there, if anyone was within earshot, this might be her last chance. The sun would bring warmth, but also the harsh reality of another day spent dying slowly in the wilderness. "Help," she managed, the word coming out strangled and weak. "Please, someone help me." She tried again, putting every ounce of remaining strength into the effort. "Help! I am here! Please!" The sound of hoofbeats in the distance made her heart leap with hope before terror seized her. What if it was the thieves returning? What if they had decided to come back and finish what they had started? But she was in no position to be selective about her potential rescuers. Death by bullet would at least be faster than slowly succumbing to exposure and dehydration. The rider appeared through the morning mist, like something out of a dream, or perhaps a hallucination brought on by her suffering. He sat tall in the saddle atop a dark bay horse, his broad-shouldered frame silhouetted against the rising sun. He wore typical cowboy attire, a worn leather vest over a blue cotton shirt, dusty brown trousers, and a hat that had seen better days. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. The way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar, the strong line of his jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble, and most importantly, the look of genuine concern that crossed his face when he spotted her. "Good Lord," he said, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. He rushed toward her, his boots kicking up dust, and Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face before she could stop them. "What happened? Who did this to you?" His voice was deep and warm, tinged with an accent that suggested he had spent most of his life in the Southwest. He pulled a knife from his belt, and Rebecca flinched instinctively before realizing he meant to cut her bonds. The rope fell away, and she immediately collapsed forward, her legs unable to support her weight after being in the same position for so many hours. The cowboy caught her before she hit the ground, his strong arms wrapping around her with surprising gentleness. "Easy now, I have got you. You are safe. I promise you are safe." Rebecca tried to speak, but her damaged throat would only produce a painful rasp. The cowboy seemed to understand without words. He guided her to sit against the tree trunk, this time in a position that did not strain her battered body, and retrieved a canteen from his saddle. He uncapped it and held it to her lips, tilting it slowly so she could drink without choking. The water was the most wonderful thing Rebecca had ever tasted. She drank greedily until he gently pulled the canteen away. "Not too fast. You will make yourself sick. Just small sips for now." He allowed her another small drink before setting the canteen aside and examining her wrists. His expression darkened as he saw the raw, bloody flesh where the ropes had cut deep. "Those bastards did a number on you. Pardon my language, but there is no other word for men who would do something like this to a woman." "Thieves," Rebecca managed to whisper, her voice like sandpaper. "Stage robbery. Driver is dead. Another woman, older, they took her somewhere else." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "How long ago?" "Yesterday afternoon. Left me here at sunset, I think. Hard to tell." He nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon, as if calculating distances and probabilities. "My name is James Jackson. I have a ranch about 5 miles east of here. I was out tracking a couple of stray cattle when I heard you calling. Can you tell me your name?" "Rebecca Garrett." She paused to take another careful sip of water when he offered the canteen again. "I was traveling to Stillwater, teaching position. Stillwater is about 15 miles northwest of here. Those thieves took you pretty far off the main road." James stood and walked a wide circle around the area, studying the ground with the practiced eye of someone who knew how to read tracks. 3 horses, looks like, headed south from here, probably making for the border. By now they could be in Texas. Rebecca felt her chest tighten with despair. "Then they are gone. Everything they took is just gone." "Most likely," James admitted, returning to crouch beside her. "But right now, that is not what matters. What matters is getting you somewhere safe and warm, getting those wounds cleaned and bandaged, and making sure you are all right. Do you have any other injuries? Did they hurt you beyond tying you up?" She understood what he was really asking, and despite everything, she felt a flush of gratitude for his delicacy in posing the question. "No, they just wanted valuables. They barely looked at me like I was a person. Just an obstacle to get through on their way to whatever they really wanted." "Small mercy," James said quietly. "Can you ride? I can take you back to my ranch. My sister lives with me and can help attend to you properly. After you have rested and eaten, we can get you to Stillwater, if that is still where you want to go." Rebecca tried to stand, using the tree trunk for support. Her legs shook violently, and she would have fallen again if James had not steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "I do not think I can walk very far," she admitted. "You will ride with me," he said simply. "Come on." He helped her over to his horse, and Rebecca marveled at how patient and gentle he was through the entire awkward process of getting her mounted. He climbed up behind her, one arm wrapping securely around her waist to keep her steady, while his other hand held the reins. "Lean back against me if you need to. It is about an hour's ride, and you look like you might fall over at any moment." Rebecca wanted to protest that she was fine, that she could manage on her own, but her body had other ideas. The moment the horse started moving at an easy walk, she found herself sagging back against James's solid chest, too exhausted to maintain her pride. He did not comment on it, just adjusted his grip slightly to make sure she was secure, and urged his horse into a gentle but steady pace. The ride passed in a strange blur. Rebecca was aware of the sun climbing higher in the sky, of the landscape gradually changing from open prairie to land that showed signs of cultivation and care, of the warmth of James's body behind her, keeping the morning chill at bay. She must have dozed off at some point, because the next thing she knew, James was saying her name softly. "Rebecca? We are here. Can you wake up for me?" She forced her eyes open to see a ranch house ahead, a solid structure made of wood with a covered porch and stone chimney. It was not grand, but it looked well-maintained and welcoming. A barn stood nearby, along with several other outbuildings and a corral where horses grazed peacefully. Chickens pecked at the ground near what looked like a vegetable garden, and smoke rose from the chimney, suggesting someone was home and had a fire going. A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on an apron. She was perhaps a few years younger than James, with the same dark hair and strong features, though her face was more delicate and her build more slender. Her eyes widened when she saw Rebecca's condition. "James! What on earth?" "Stage robbery," James said, dismounting and then carefully helping Rebecca down. "This is Rebecca Garrett. She was left tied up all night. She needs food, water, medical attention, and a safe place to rest." The woman was already moving forward, her expression shifting from surprise to determination. "Bring her inside. I will heat water and get the medical supplies. Lord above, look at those wrists." James guided Rebecca into the house, supporting most of her weight. The interior was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and curtains that looked like they had been sewn with care. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. James led her to a chair near the fire and helped her sit while his sister bustled about, gathering supplies with practiced efficiency. "I am Jennifer Jackson," the woman said, setting a basin of water on the table, along with clean cloths and various bottles and tins. "James's sister, as you probably figured. Let me see those wrists." Rebecca held out her arms, wincing as Jennifer began to gently clean the wounds. The water stung, but she bit her lip and endured it. Jennifer worked with the skilled hands of someone who had tended injuries before, probably from years of ranch work and the various accidents that came with that life. "You are lucky my brother found you when he did," Jennifer said, as she applied some kind of salve that smelled of herbs. "Another day out there, and you might not have made it, especially if the weather had turned." "I know," Rebecca said quietly. "I thought I was going to die out there. I truly did." James had disappeared, but returned now with a blanket, which he draped around Rebecca's shoulders. "Jennifer is the finest nurse in 3 counties, he said, with obvious pride in his sister. "She has patched up everything from snake bites to broken bones. You are in good hands." Jennifer shot him a look that suggested she thought he was exaggerating, but she did not contradict him. She finished bandaging Rebecca's wrists with clean white cloth and then moved on to examining her for other injuries. "Any pain in your chest or ribs? Those thieves did not kick you or anything?" "No, nothing like that, just my wrists and throat from screaming." "Let me make you some tea with honey. It will help soothe your throat." Jennifer stood and moved to the kitchen area, where she began preparing the promised tea, along with what looked like a substantial breakfast. James sat down in the chair across from Rebecca, his elbows resting on his knees as he leaned forward. "You said you were heading to Stillwater for a teaching position. Do they know you are coming? Will anyone be looking for you when you do not arrive?" Rebecca's heart sank as she realized the implications. "Yes, I was supposed to arrive yesterday evening. The school board chairman, Mr. Peterson, was expecting me. He is probably wondering what happened, and the stage company will know something went wrong when their coach does not arrive." "Someone will ride out looking then," James said. "They will find the driver's body and start searching. We should probably send word to town. Let them know you are safe and what happened. I can ride to Stillwater this afternoon if you feel comfortable staying here with Jennifer." "I do not want to impose on your hospitality any more than I already have," Rebecca said, though the thought of being left alone, even in this safe place, made her anxious. "Nonsense," Jennifer called from the kitchen. "You are staying until you are properly recovered. I will not hear any arguments about it. James, go out and finish your morning chores while I get some food into this poor woman. Then you can ride to Stillwater and sort out the details." James looked like he wanted to argue, but apparently knew better than to contradict his sister when she used that tone. He stood, gave Rebecca a reassuring nod, and headed back outside. Through the window, she could see him walking toward the barn with long, confident strides. Jennifer brought over a plate loaded with eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, and thick slices of fresh bread slathered with butter. The tea came in a large mug, sweetened generously with honey. "Eat slowly," she instructed. "Your stomach might be upset after going so long without food." Rebecca tried to follow the advice, but the moment she tasted the eggs, her hunger overwhelmed her caution. She ate steadily, forcing herself to chew thoroughly and pause between bites. Jennifer sat across from her, drinking her own cup of tea and watching with satisfaction as Rebecca cleaned her plate. "Would you like more?" Jennifer asked. "I probably should not, but yes, please." Rebecca was surprised by how much she could eat. Her body was clearly desperate for fuel after the ordeal. Jennifer loaded up the plate again, though with slightly smaller portions this time. As Rebecca ate, they talked. Jennifer explained that she and James had inherited the ranch from their parents, who had both died of influenza 5 years earlier. James was 28 and had been running the ranch since their father's death, while Jennifer, at 24, managed the household and helped with the livestock when needed. They had a few hired hands who came in during busy seasons, but mostly it was just the two of them working the land. "James is a good man," Jennifer said, her voice warm with affection. "He works harder than anyone I have ever known, and he has a strong sense of right and wrong. When he found you this morning, I know it probably scared him half to death thinking about what might have happened if he had decided to search in a different direction or had given up looking for those cattle. I owe him my life," Rebecca said simply. "There is no question about that." Jennifer reached across the table and patted her hand gently, careful of the bandages. "He would say he just did what anyone decent would do. but we both know not everyone would have taken the time to look for the source of those cries, or would have cared enough to help, even if they had heard them. After breakfast, Jennifer showed Rebecca to a small bedroom that was clearly a guest room, judging by the impersonal but tidy decorations. "You should rest," Jennifer said firmly. "I will wake you for lunch, but your body needs sleep to heal." Rebecca wanted to argue that she had to get to Stillwater, that she could not afford to lose this teaching position, that she had responsibilities, but the moment she lay down on the soft bed, her body betrayed her by immediately beginning to shut down. She was asleep before Jennifer had even closed the door. She dreamed of the robbery, but this time James appeared not at dawn, but during the attack itself. He rode in like the heroes from the dime novels she had secretly read as a girl, guns blazing, driving off the thieves and catching her before she fell. She woke with a start, disoriented and confused about where she was until the events of the morning came flooding back. The light coming through the window suggested it was early afternoon. Rebecca sat up slowly, testing her body's responses. She was sore everywhere, and her wrists throbbed with a dull ache. But she felt significantly better than she had that morning. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a glass on the bedside table, along with what looked like a clean dress. Rebecca examined the garment and realized it must belong to Jennifer. The two women were similar enough in size that it would probably fit reasonably well. She poured herself some water and drank it down, then stood and made her way to the washstand in the corner. Someone had filled the basin with fresh water, and there was a small mirror above it. Rebecca looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her face was scratched and dirty, her hair a tangled mess, and her eyes had dark circles beneath them. She looked like she had been through a war. Using the soap and water, she cleaned herself as best she could, and then changed into the borrowed dress. It fit well enough, perhaps a little loose in the bodice, but otherwise acceptable. She tried to do something with her hair, but without a proper brush, the best she could manage was to finger comb out the worst of the tangles and braid it simply down her back. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Jennifer in the kitchen, kneading bread dough. The other woman looked up with a smile. "You look much better. How do you feel?" "Like I was tied to a tree all night," Rebecca said honestly, which made Jennifer laugh. "But better than I did this morning. Is James back yet?" "Not yet, but I expect him within the hour. Stillwater is not far, and he rides fast. Come sit and have some lunch. I made soup." The soup was rich and hearty, full of vegetables and chunks of beef, and Rebecca ate 2 bowls while Jennifer worked on her bread. They talked more, and Rebecca found herself genuinely liking the other woman. Jennifer was practical and straightforward, with a sharp sense of humor and clear intelligence. She asked questions about Rebecca's teaching plans, about what she hoped to accomplish in Stillwater, and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. "We need more educated women out here," Jennifer said. "I can read and write, thank heavens, because my mother insisted on it, but so many cannot, and their opportunities are limited because of it. What you are doing is important." "If I still have a position," Rebecca said quietly. "They may have given it to someone else by now, thinking I changed my mind or something happened to me." "James will sort it out," Jennifer said with confidence. "He can be very persuasive when he wants to be." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of hoofbeats announced James's return. Both women went to the door, and Rebecca felt her heartbeat quicken at the sight of him dismounting. He looked tired but satisfied, and when he saw her standing there in his sister's dress, something flickered in his eyes that she could not quite identify. "You look better," he said, which seemed to be a popular observation. "I spoke with Mr. Peterson and the sheriff. Peterson is relieved you are safe and says the position is still yours whenever you feel ready to take it up. The sheriff is organizing a search party for the other passenger from the stage and will send men out to look for the thieves, though I told him I doubt they will have much luck. He said they found the driver's body and will arrange for a proper burial." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of the driver. She had not even known his name, but he had died trying to protect his passengers. "That is good. That they will bury him properly, I mean." James nodded. "I also stopped by the boarding house where you were supposed to stay. Mrs. Thompson, the landlady, said your room will be waiting for you and that you should not worry about the rent for this week. Apparently, news of the robbery spread through town fast, and everyone is concerned about you." "That is very kind," Rebecca said, feeling overwhelmed by the generosity of people she had never even met. "There is one other thing," James added, reaching into his pocket. "They found this on the road near where the stage was attacked. Peterson asked me to return it to you." He held out a small leather-bound book, and Rebecca gasped as she recognized it. "My journal! I thought they took everything." "Must have fallen out during the struggle," James said, placing it gently in her hands. "Peterson said to tell you he was glad they could recover at least something." Rebecca clutched the journal to her chest, feeling an absurd amount of relief at having this one thing back. It contained her thoughts, her plans, her memories. Having it felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that she had thought was lost forever. "Thank you," she said, looking up at James, "for everything, for finding me, for bringing me here, for riding to town. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "No repayment needed," James said firmly. "Anyone decent would have done the same." Jennifer made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh, and when Rebecca glanced at her, she saw the other woman wearing an expression of knowing amusement. Before Rebecca could ask what that meant, Jennifer announced that dinner would be ready in an hour and that James should go clean up before he stunk up the whole house. The evening passed pleasantly. They ate dinner together at the simple wooden table, and the conversation flowed easily between the three of them. James told stories about ranch life, about ornery cattle and horses with attitude, about the time a skunk had gotten into the chicken coop and the resulting chaos. Jennifer shared tales about the neighbors, about the growing community around Stillwater, about the dance that was held every month in the town square, where everyone gathered to socialize. Rebecca found herself laughing for the first time since before the robbery. And it felt good. It felt like maybe she could recover from this, like maybe the terror and helplessness she had felt would not define the rest of her life. After dinner, James excused himself to check on the animals one final time before bed, and Jennifer began clearing the dishes. Rebecca stood to help, but Jennifer waved her away. "You are still recovering. Go sit by the fire and relax." "I have been doing nothing but resting all day," Rebecca protested, but Jennifer just gave her a stern look that brooked no argument. Rebecca made her way to the comfortable chair near the fireplace and opened her journal. She had not written in it since the day before the robbery, and she felt compelled to document what had happened while it was still fresh in her mind. She wrote about the attack, about the terror of being left alone in the dark, about James appearing like an answer to her prayers. She wrote about Jennifer's kindness, about how safe she felt here in this simple ranch house with these good people. She was so absorbed in her writing that she did not notice James had returned until he spoke. "What are you writing about?" Rebecca looked up, startled, to find him standing a few feet away, watching her with curious eyes. "Just recording today's events. I try to write regularly. It helps me process things." "May I?" He gestured to the chair across from her, and Rebecca nodded. James sat down with a slight groan that suggested his own body was tired from the long day. He stretched his legs toward the fire, and they sat in comfortable silence for a few moments. Rebecca found herself studying him when she thought he was not looking. He had a strong profile, the kind of face that suggested both determination and kindness. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that she had not noticed before, and she wondered what story lay behind it. "Can I ask you something?" James said suddenly. "Of course." "Why teaching? Why come all the way out here to Oklahoma when you could probably find a position somewhere safer, somewhere more established?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. "Because it matters more here. Back east there are plenty of schools and plenty of teachers, but out here, children are growing up without access to education, without opportunities to better themselves. I wanted to go somewhere I could make a real difference. Is that naive?" "No," James said firmly. "It is admirable. We need more people willing to come west and help build something lasting. Too many just come to get rich quick or because they are running from something." "Are you?" Rebecca asked before she could stop herself. "Running from something, I mean?" James smiled slightly. "No. My parents came here to build a life, and after they died, Jennifer and I decided to honor that by keeping the ranch going. It is hard work, but it is honest work, and I cannot imagine doing anything else. You are lucky," Rebecca said, "to know exactly what you are supposed to be doing with your life. I always felt called to teaching, but sometimes I wonder if I am cut out for it, especially after yesterday. I just froze when those men attacked the stage. I could not move, could not think, could not do anything." "You survived," James pointed out. "That took courage too." They talked late into the evening, long after Jennifer had gone to bed. Rebecca learned that James loved horses more than any other animal, that he could not cook to save his life, which was why he was lucky to have Jennifer, and that he had once wanted to be a lawman, but had given up that dream to run the ranch. James learned that Rebecca had taught herself piano by sneaking into the church when no one was around, that she had a younger brother who was studying medicine in St. Louis, and that she had always been terrified of spiders, but tried not to let anyone know. When Rebecca finally retired to her room, she lay in bed replaying the conversation in her mind. There was something about James that made her feel safe and seen in a way she had not experienced before. It was probably just gratitude, she told herself. He had saved her life after all. It was natural to feel a connection to someone who had done something so significant. But as she drifted off to sleep, she could not help but think about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, or the deep rumble of his laugh, or the gentle way he had held her on the horse that morning. The next few days fell into a pleasant routine. Rebecca's body healed quickly under Jennifer's care, and she found herself helping around the house despite Jennifer's protests. She could not just sit idle while these people were working, so she helped with cooking and cleaning, with mending and garden work. It felt good to be useful, to contribute something in return for their hospitality. James was often out working on the ranch, but he made a point of joining them for meals, and Rebecca found herself looking forward to those times. They talked about everything and nothing, debating the state of the country, sharing stories and jokes, building a friendship that felt natural and easy. On the 4th day of her stay, Rebecca announced at breakfast that she was feeling well enough to travel to Stillwater. "I have already imposed on your kindness too long," she said, "and I need to get started with the teaching position. The children have been without instruction for weeks already." Jennifer looked disappointed but nodded in understanding. James, however, frowned. "Are you sure you are ready? Your wrists are still healing, and the journey might be harder than you think." "I am sure," Rebecca said firmly, even though part of her wanted to stay in this safe, comfortable place indefinitely. "But I would appreciate if someone could take me. I will pay for the transportation, of course." "Do not be ridiculous," James said. "I will take you, and I will not hear anything about payment. We can leave this afternoon if you are set on it." Rebecca nodded, ignoring the strange feeling of disappointment in her chest. This was what she wanted, what she had come to Oklahoma for. She had a job to do, a life to build. She could not stay here forever, no matter how appealing the idea might be. They left after lunch, with Rebecca once again riding with James. Jennifer had packed a bag with the borrowed dress and some food for the journey, and she hugged Rebecca tightly before they departed. "You are welcome here any time," she said. "I mean that truly. Come visit whenever you can." "I will," Rebecca promised, surprised by how much she meant it. The ride to Stillwater took about 3 hours at an easy pace. James pointed out landmarks along the way, explaining the geography of the area and introducing her to the land that would be her new home. Stillwater was visible from a distance, a collection of buildings clustered together on the prairie, smoke rising from chimneys, evidence of life and civilization. As they entered the town, Rebecca took in her surroundings with interest. Main Street was wide and dusty, lined with buildings that looked sturdy if not fancy. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, a bank, and various other establishments that suggested a community in the process of establishing itself. People moved about their business, stopping to stare at the newcomers with curiosity. James guided his horse toward a 2-story building with a sign that read, "Thompson's Boarding House." He dismounted and helped Rebecca down, and before they could even reach the door, it swung open to reveal a plump woman with graying hair and a welcoming smile. "You must be Miss Garrett. Oh, we have been so worried about you. Come in, and you must be Mr. Jackson, the one who found her. Bless you, young man. Bless you for bringing her back safe." Mrs. Thompson ushered them inside with such enthusiasm that Rebecca barely had time to say goodbye to James. He caught her hand briefly before she was swept away. "I will come check on you in a few days," he said. "Make sure you are settling in all right." "You do not have to do that," Rebecca said, but she hoped he would anyway. "I know," James said with a slight smile. "I will come anyway." Then he was gone, and Rebecca was being introduced to the other boarders and shown to her room and given a schedule for meals, and generally overwhelmed with information and attention. Mrs. Thompson was kind but talkative, and by the time Rebecca was finally alone in her room, she felt exhausted. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the street. Rebecca unpacked her few belongings, including the journal James had recovered for her, and sat on the bed to collect her thoughts. This was it. This was her new life. She should be excited, should be eager to begin this adventure. Instead, she found herself thinking about a ranch house 5 miles east, about bread baking and easy conversation, about dark eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. The next morning, Rebecca met with Mr. Peterson, the school board chairman. He was a thin man with spectacles and a nervous manner, and he seemed genuinely relieved that she had arrived and was willing to take up the position, despite the traumatic introduction to Oklahoma. "The schoolhouse is small," he warned as he led her to the building on the edge of town, "and we only have about 20 students of various ages. You will be teaching everything from basic letters to advanced mathematics, all in the same room. It is not ideal, but it is what we have to work with." The schoolhouse was indeed small, a single room with a pot-bellied stove in the corner, rows of mismatched desks, a chalkboard on one wall, and shelves containing a modest collection of books and supplies. But it was clean and had good light from the large windows, and Rebecca felt a spark of excitement as she imagined filling this space with learning and laughter. "It is perfect," she said, and meant it. Mr. Peterson looked relieved. "Wonderful. Classes will resume tomorrow morning. The children arrive at 8 o'clock and leave at 3 with an hour break for lunch. You will have Saturdays and Sundays free, of course. The salary is $35 a month, paid on the 1st. Does that sound acceptable?" It was actually more than Rebecca had expected. Very acceptable. Thank you. She spent the rest of the day preparing the schoolroom, organizing supplies, and reviewing the curriculum materials that had been left by the previous teacher. It was good to have something to focus on, something to keep her mind occupied. She did not want to think about why she kept glancing up whenever she heard hoofbeats outside, or why her heart sank a little each time it was not James. The first day of classes went better than Rebecca could have hoped. The children were bright and eager, ranging in age from 5 to 14. Some were already proficient in reading and arithmetic, while others were starting from scratch. Rebecca divided them into groups based on ability and rotated between them throughout the day, assigning work to one group while teaching another. The children were curious about her, asking questions about where she came from, and whether it was true she had been kidnapped by outlaws. Rebecca answered as honestly as she could without frightening them, emphasizing that she was safe now and that bad people were rare compared to the good ones. A girl of about 12 named Sarah raised her hand timidly. "Is it true that Mr. Jackson found you? My pa says Mr. Jackson is the best tracker in the county and probably could have found you blindfolded." Rebecca smiled. "Mr. Jackson did find me. Yes, I am very grateful to him." "He is so handsome," Sarah sighed dramatically, which made several of the other girls giggle. "When I grow up, I want to marry someone just like him." "Focus on your schoolwork first," Rebecca said firmly, but she could not quite suppress her own smile. "Romance can wait until you are older." The days fell into a pattern. Rebecca taught during the week, spent her evenings preparing lessons and grading work, and attended church on Sundays, where she was gradually introduced to the rest of the community. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, but Rebecca still felt like an outsider looking in. She had not yet found her place here. James came to visit on Saturday, 6 days after he had brought her to town. Rebecca had just finished tidying the schoolroom for the day when she heard a knock on the door. She opened it to find him standing there, hat in hand, looking slightly uncertain. "I hope I am not disturbing you," he said. "I just wanted to see how you were settling in." "You are not disturbing me at all," Rebecca said, stepping back to let him enter. "Come in. I was just finishing up for the day." James looked around the schoolroom with interest, taking in the children's artwork on the walls, the neatly organized supplies, the words Rebecca had written on the chalkboard for Monday's lesson. "It looks good. Looks like a real school." "It is a real school," Rebecca said, somewhat amused. "What did you think it would look like?" "I do not know. Less organized, maybe. You have only been here a week." They talked for a while, and Rebecca found herself telling him about the students, about the challenges of teaching so many different ages at once, about the satisfaction she felt when she saw understanding dawn in a child's eyes. James listened attentively, asking questions and seeming genuinely interested in her work. "Would you like to get dinner?" James asked suddenly. "There is a restaurant in town that serves decent food. Nothing like Jennifer's cooking, but edible." Rebecca hesitated. She knew what people would think if they saw them dining together. Small towns thrived on gossip, and she was still the new teacher, still trying to establish herself as someone serious and professional. but she also really wanted to spend more time with James. "I would like that," she said finally. "Let me just get my shawl." The restaurant was small and cozy, with checkered tablecloths and mismatched chairs. They sat by the window, and Rebecca was aware of the curious glances from other diners. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the conversation with James. They talked about his week, about a foal that had been born on Tuesday, about repairs he was making to the barn, about his hopes for expanding the herd next year. It should have been boring, talk of cattle and buildings and business plans. But Rebecca found it fascinating. She loved seeing the passion in his eyes when he talked about his ranch, the pride he took in his work. "Do you ever regret it?" Rebecca asked. "Giving up your dream of being a lawman?" James was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes. But then I think about what I have built, what my parents started, and I realize that this is important too. Keeping the ranch running, providing work for the hands we hire during busy seasons, contributing to the community. It might not be as exciting as chasing outlaws, but it matters." "It does matter," Rebecca agreed. "Everything you do matters." Something shifted between them in that moment, some unspoken understanding that this was more than just friendship, more than just gratitude. Rebecca saw it in the way James looked at her, in the warmth in his eyes that had nothing to do with the lamplight. After dinner, James walked her back to the boarding house. They moved slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. When they reached the front steps, James turned to face her. "May I call on you again?" he asked formally. "Properly, I mean. As someone courting you?" Rebecca's heart leaped. "I would like that very much." James smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "Good. That is very good. How about next Saturday? I could pick you up after you finish at the school, maybe take you for a ride, show you more of the area." "That sounds wonderful." They said goodnight, and Rebecca went inside, feeling like she was floating. Mrs. Thompson was waiting in the parlor, pretending to read a book, but the knowing look on her face suggested she had been watching out the window. "Mr. Jackson is a fine man," Mrs. Thompson said carefully. "Comes from good people, works hard, treats everyone with respect. You could do far worse." "We are just friends," Rebecca said, but even she could hear how unconvincing that sounded. Mrs. Thompson just smiled and went back to her book. Over the following weeks, James came to call every Saturday without fail. Sometimes they had dinner, sometimes they went for rides into the countryside, sometimes they just sat on the boarding house porch and talked until the stars came out. Rebecca had never felt this way about anyone before, this sense of rightness and ease and possibility. She visited the ranch twice more, having tea with Jennifer and helping with various projects. Jennifer had become a true friend, someone Rebecca could talk to about anything, including her growing feelings for James. "He cares for you deeply," Jennifer said one afternoon, as they worked together in the garden. "I can see it in how he talks about you, how he makes sure to finish his work early on Saturdays so he can get to town. I have never seen him like this with anyone." "Has he courted other women?" Rebecca asked, trying to sound casual. Jennifer laughed. "A few, over the years, but nothing serious. He is picky, my brother, has high standards. The fact that he is pursuing you so openly should tell you something." Winter began to settle over Oklahoma, bringing colder temperatures and occasionally snow. Rebecca had been in Stillwater for nearly 3 months, and she felt like she had finally found her place. The children were progressing beautifully in their studies. The community had fully accepted her, and her relationship with James was deepening with every passing week. In December, James invited her to spend Christmas at the ranch. "Jennifer is planning a proper celebration," he explained. "Roast turkey, all the fixings, maybe some caroling if we can rope in a few of the neighbors. We would love to have you there." Rebecca accepted eagerly. She had been dreading spending the holiday alone at the boarding house, and the thought of celebrating with James and Jennifer filled her with joy. Christmas Day was magical. The ranch house was decorated with pine boughs and candles, and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air. Jennifer had outdone herself with the cooking, preparing not just turkey but ham, sweet potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, fresh bread, and 3 different kinds of pie. Several neighbors stopped by throughout the day, and there was singing and laughter and warmth. But the best part was being with James. They sat together by the fire after dinner, comfortably full and content, while Jennifer chatted with one of the neighbor women in the kitchen. James reached over and took Rebecca's hand, intertwining their fingers. "I have something for you," he said quietly. "A Christmas gift. James, you did not have to do that. I did not bring anything for you. Your presence is gift enough." He pulled a small wrapped package from his pocket and handed it to her. "Go on, open it." Rebecca carefully unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a leather-bound book. When she opened it, she gasped. It was blank, a journal like the one she had lost during the robbery, but newer and with better quality paper. "I know the one that was recovered is important to you," James said, "but I thought maybe you could use a new one too. For new memories, new beginnings." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "It is perfect, thank you." She leaned over and kissed his cheek, a bold move for her, but it felt right. James turned his head slightly so their lips met instead, and they shared their first real kiss there by the fireplace on Christmas Day. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I love you, Rebecca Garrett," James said simply. "I have been wanting to say that for weeks now, but I did not want to scare you away." "You could never scare me away," Rebecca said. "I love you too, James Jackson. I think I have loved you since you found me that morning." They kissed again, and Rebecca felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This was not how she had imagined her life going when she decided to come to Oklahoma, but it was better than anything she could have planned. As winter turned to spring, their courtship continued to flourish. James proposed in March, on a beautiful day, when wildflowers were just beginning to bloom across the prairie. He took Rebecca to a spot near a creek on his property, a place he said he had loved since childhood, and got down on one knee. "Rebecca Garrett, you have brought more joy into my life than I knew was possible. You are strong and brave and smart and kind, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The ring he offered was simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small diamond that caught the light. Rebecca did not even hesitate. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. They married in May, a small ceremony at the church in Stillwater, with most of the town in attendance. Rebecca wore a white dress that Jennifer had helped her sew, and James wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous and happy all at once. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and when they kissed, applause erupted from the congregation. The school board had agreed to let Rebecca continue teaching after her marriage, which was unusual but not unheard of in frontier communities that desperately needed educators. She and James worked out a schedule where she would stay in town during the week, teaching and boarding with Mrs. Thompson, and return to the ranch on weekends. It was not perfect, but it allowed her to pursue her calling while building a life with the man she loved. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. Learning to share space and make joint decisions and merge two lives into one was challenging at times. But the foundation of love and respect they had built made it easier. When disagreements arose, they talked through them. When times were hard, they supported each other. When joy came, they celebrated together. Rebecca continued teaching, touching the lives of dozens of children over the years. James expanded the ranch, building it into one of the most successful operations in the county. Jennifer eventually met and married a neighboring rancher, moving to her own home, but staying close and visiting often. In the autumn of 1884, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. The news filled both her and James with excitement and terror in equal measure. She taught until she was 7 months along, at which point the school board insisted she take leave. A temporary teacher was brought in to finish the school year. Their first child, a son they named Jacob, was born in early April of 1885. He had James's dark hair and Rebecca's eyes, and both parents fell completely in love with him the moment they saw him. Rebecca took a full year off from teaching to care for Jacob, and during that time, she discovered that she loved being a mother just as much as she loved teaching. She returned to the classroom the following autumn, finding that the break had renewed her passion for education. Jacob stayed with Jennifer during the school days, and the arrangement worked well for everyone involved. 2 years later, Rebecca gave birth to a daughter they named Rachel. This time, she only took 6 months off before returning to work, having learned from experience that she could balance motherhood and teaching if she was organized and had good support. James was an involved father, taking on his share of childcare duties without complaint, and Jennifer continued to help whenever needed. Life was full and busy and sometimes overwhelming, but it was good. The ranch prospered year after year. The children grew healthy and strong. Rebecca's students continued to learn and thrive under her instruction. The community of Stillwater grew around them, becoming more established and connected to the wider world. On their 10th wedding anniversary, James surprised Rebecca with a picnic at the spot where he had proposed. They left the children with Jennifer for the afternoon and rode out to the creek, carrying a basket full of food and a blanket to sit on. 10 years, James mused as they sat by the water, watching it flow past. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday I found you tied to that tree. Other times, it feels like you have been in my life forever. I still have nightmares about that night sometimes, Rebecca admitted. But then I think about everything that came after, and I realize that terrible experience brought me to you. I would not change that for anything. James pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. I would have found you anyway, he said confidently. Maybe not that day, but eventually. We were meant to find each other. Rebecca smiled. You really believe that? I do. Some things are just fate. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the peace and beauty of the afternoon. Then James pulled something from his pocket and handed it to Rebecca. It was the journal he had given her that first Christmas, now worn from years of use. I found this on your desk, he said. I was not snooping, I promise. It was just lying open, and I saw what you had written. Rebecca felt her cheeks flush. She had been recording memories from their life together, moments she wanted to preserve. Some of them were quite personal and romantic. I am sorry, she said. I should have been more careful about leaving it out. Do not apologize. What you wrote was beautiful. It reminded me of how lucky I am to have you. He paused, then added with a mischievous smile. Though I take issue with your description of my first attempt at making breakfast, I maintain that the eggs were not that burnt. Rebecca laughed, the tension broken. They were absolutely that burnt. I had to scrape them off the pan. They joked and teased each other, then kissed as the sun began to lower in the sky. The afternoon passed too quickly, and eventually they had to pack up and head back to collect the children. The years continued to flow past. Jacob and Rachel grew into bright, curious children who loved both the ranch and books equally. Rebecca eventually scaled back her teaching to part-time, wanting to spend more time with her family as the children got older. She still loved educating others, but her priorities had shifted. James's hair began to show streaks of silver at the temples, and Rebecca developed a few fine lines around her eyes from years of smiling. They were growing older together, building a history that was written in the land they worked, and the children they raised and the quiet moments they shared. When Jacob was 12 and Rachel was 10, Rebecca gave birth to one more child, a surprise daughter they named Julia. The pregnancy had been unexpected at Rebecca's age of 36, and both she and James had worried about complications. But Julia arrived healthy and perfect, completing their family in a way they had not known they needed. Rebecca retired from teaching after Julia's birth, deciding that she wanted to focus her energy on raising this late addition to their family. The school board threw her a retirement party, and dozens of former students came to thank her for the education and opportunities she had given them. It was an emotional day, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Life settled into a new rhythm. Rebecca devoted herself to managing the household and raising Julia, while also helping James with ranch administrative tasks. She had always been good with numbers and organization, and she took over keeping the books and managing correspondence. They made a good team, each contributing their strengths to the shared enterprise of their life together. Jacob showed an interest in ranching from a young age and began working alongside James as soon as he was old enough. Rachel, meanwhile, inherited her mother's love of teaching and announced at age 14 that she wanted to pursue education, just as Rebecca had. Rebecca helped her daughter prepare for the teacher's examination, and Rachel passed with high marks at age 16. Julia grew into a spirited child with her father's determination and her mother's compassion. She loved the ranch and the animals, especially the horses, and spent hours in the barn helping care for them. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Jacob was now 23 and engaged to a sweet young woman from a neighboring ranch. Rachel, at 21, had been teaching in Stillwater for 2 years and loving every moment of it. Julia, at 13, was rapidly growing into a young woman with strong opinions and big dreams. Jennifer was there with her husband and their 4 children. Several neighbors and friends stopped by throughout the day. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, everything a celebration should be. That evening, after the guests had departed and the children had gone to bed, Rebecca and James sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. James held her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin, the way he had done 1,000 times before. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he asked. "Only 3 times," Rebecca said with a smile. "You are falling behind." "I love you," James said, making it 4. "Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to marry me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for our children and our home and every single day we have had together." Rebecca felt tears gathering in her eyes, the happy kind. "Thank you for hearing my cries that morning. Thank you for saving me and bringing me here and loving me so completely. You gave me everything I did not know I needed." They kissed under the stars, 2 people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful and lasting. The years that followed brought changes, as years always do. Jacob married and took over more of the ranch operations, allowing James to slow down and work less intensively. Rachel married a banker from Stillwater and continued teaching while starting her own family. Julia eventually went east to attend a women's college, determined to bring progressive ideas back to Oklahoma. James and Rebecca became grandparents multiple times over, their house frequently filled with the sounds of grandchildren playing. They hosted Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations, becoming the heart of their growing extended family. As they entered their 60s, both Rebecca and James's bodies began to show the wear of decades of hard work. James developed arthritis in his hands and knees, while Rebecca's eyesight started to fade. But they adapted, helping each other with tasks that had become difficult, finding new ways to stay active and engaged with life. On a warm evening in June of 1907, 25 years to the day after James had found Rebecca tied to that tree, they returned to the spot. It had become a tradition to visit on the anniversary, a way of honoring the beginning of their story. The oak tree was still there, older and larger, but unmistakable. Rebecca placed her hand on the rough bark, remembering the terror and desperation of that long-ago night. It seemed like something from another lifetime, something that had happened to a different person entirely. "I was so scared," she said quietly. "I truly thought I was going to die alone and forgotten." James came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "But you did not die. You lived. And you built a life that has touched so many people. Your students, our children, our grandchildren, all of us are better because you survived that night." Rebecca turned in his arms to face him. His hair was white now, and his face was deeply lined, but his eyes still held the same warmth and kindness that had struck her that first morning. "We built this life together," she corrected. "I could not have done any of it without you." "We make a good team," James agreed. "Always have." They stood there together, holding each other in the shade of the old oak tree, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang its evening song. The prairie stretched out around them, vast and beautiful and home. "I love you, James Jackson," Rebecca said, "today and always." "I love you too, Rebecca Jackson," he replied, "today and always." They walked back to where they had left the wagon, helping each other over the rough ground, moving slower than they once had, but moving together. The ranch house was visible in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney, where their daughter Rachel was preparing dinner for the family gathering, planned for that evening. As they drove home, Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her here, the stagecoach robbery that could have ended her life, but instead brought her to the man she was meant to love, the teaching position that had given her purpose and fulfillment, the children and grandchildren who filled their lives with joy, the community they had helped build and strengthen over the decades. It had not been an easy life. There had been hardships and heartbreaks along the way, droughts that threatened the ranch, illnesses that scared them, losses of people they cared about. But through it all, they had faced everything together, supporting and loving each other through every challenge. The wagon pulled up in front of the house, and immediately grandchildren came running out to greet them. James helped Rebecca down from the seat, and they were surrounded by hugs and excited chatter. The house smelled of roasting meat and fresh bread, and through the windows, Rebecca could see her family moving about, setting the table, laughing, living. This was what they had built together. Not just a ranch or a family, but a legacy of love and dedication and service to others. Rebecca's years of teaching had shaped the minds of countless children who had gone on to become productive members of society. James's work on the ranch had provided employment and stability for many families. Together, they had contributed something meaningful to the world. Dinner that night was loud and chaotic in the best possible way. Three of their grandchildren had a spirited debate about politics, while the younger ones told stories about school and friends. Jacob discussed ranch business with James, seeking his father's advice, even though he now made most of the decisions. Rachel shared news about her oldest son, who was preparing to attend university back east. Julia talked about the women's club she had started in Stillwater, working to improve conditions for women and children in the community. Rebecca sat at the head of the table, James at the other end, and looked around at all the faces gathered there. Every single person in this room existed because she and James had found each other on that terrible and wonderful morning in October of 1882. Every laugh, every conversation, every moment of connection could be traced back to that beginning. After dinner, as the family relaxed in the parlor, little Amanda, Rachel's youngest daughter, and only 5 years old, climbed into Rebecca's lap. "Grandma, will you tell us a story?" "What kind of story would you like?" Rebecca asked, smoothing the child's soft hair. "Tell us how you and Grandpa met," Amanda said. "Mama says it is the most romantic story ever." Rebecca glanced at James, who was smiling at her from his chair across the room. They had told this story many times over the years, had watched it become part of the family mythology, but it never got old, this tale of fate and rescue and love. "Well," Rebecca began, and the room quieted as everyone settled in to listen. "It was a long time ago, back in the autumn of 1882. I was traveling to Stillwater to become a teacher when some very bad men stopped the stagecoach I was riding in." She told the story carefully, editing out the parts that were too frightening for young ears, but keeping the essential truth. She described being left alone in the dark, of being scared, but refusing to give up hope. She told them about James appearing at dawn, like an answer to her prayers, about his kindness and strength, and the way he had made her feel safe immediately. "And then what happened?" Amanda asked, even though she had heard this story before. "Then I fell in love with him," Rebecca said simply. "Not right away, but gradually, as I got to know him and saw what a good man he was. And eventually, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes, and we have been together ever since." "That is so romantic," Amanda sighed, echoing what her mother had said. "It is romantic," Rebecca agreed, "but it is also real. Love is not just the big dramatic moments. It is all the small moments in between, all the days of working together and supporting each other and choosing to stay committed even when things are hard. Your grandfather and I have had 25 wonderful years together, but they have not all been easy. What has made them wonderful is that we faced everything as a team." James stood and crossed the room to stand beside Rebecca's chair. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and she reached up to cover it with her own. "Your grandmother is the wisest person I know," he said, "and the strongest. I am the luckiest man alive because she chose to spend her life with me." The evening wound down eventually, with family members departing to their own homes and the house growing quiet. James and Rebecca prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routine of their nightly preparations. When they finally lay down, James reached for Rebecca's hand in the darkness, just as he had done nearly every night of their marriage. "Happy anniversary," he whispered. "Happy anniversary," Rebecca replied. They fell asleep holding hands, two souls who had found each other against the odds and built a beautiful life together. The years that followed were gentle ones. James and Rebecca gradually handed over more responsibilities to their children, allowing themselves to slow down and enjoy their remaining time together. They took walks when the weather was nice, sat on the porch in rocking chairs when it was not, and spent countless hours simply being together. They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by family, and their 35th, and their 40th. Each milestone felt like both an achievement and a gift. They watched grandchildren grow and marry and have children of their own, making them great-grandparents. The family tree they had started continued to grow and branch, spreading love and legacy into the future. James passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1917 at the age of 73. He and Rebecca had been married for 42 years. Rebecca was devastated by the loss, but also grateful for every moment they had shared. She had been loved completely and had loved completely in return. Not everyone could say that. She lived for another 5 years, cared for lovingly by her children, and spending her days writing in journals, telling stories to great-grandchildren, and tending a small flower garden James had planted for her decades earlier. She passed away on a warm October morning in 1922, 60 years almost to the day from when James had found her tied to that tree. Her children buried her beside James on the ranch, under the shade of a cottonwood tree, with a headstone that read, "Rebecca Jackson, beloved wife, mother, and teacher. She touched countless lives with her wisdom and love." The ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, and with it, the story of James and Rebecca was passed down too. Great-grandchildren who never knew them personally still learned about the cowboy who heard cries at dawn and the teacher he saved and loved. The story became part of the family's identity, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in life can lead to the best things, that love can be found in unexpected places, and that a life built on kindness and commitment is a life well lived. The oak tree where Rebecca had been left, tied up that terrible night, still stands. Though it is ancient and gnarled now, sometimes members of the family visit it, placing their hands on the rough bark and thinking about the woman who survived that ordeal and went on to build such a remarkable life. They think about the cowboy who could have ridden past, who could have ignored the faint cries on the wind, but who chose to investigate and in doing so, changed the course of multiple lives. In Stillwater, the old schoolhouse where Rebecca taught was eventually replaced with a larger, more modern building, but a plaque was placed in the entryway honoring her decades of service to the community. Former students, now elderly themselves, sometimes visited to share memories of the kind teacher who had opened their minds to new possibilities, and who had believed in them when others had not. The legacy of James and Rebecca Jackson lived on not just in their descendants, but in the values they had embodied: courage in the face of adversity, commitment to community, dedication to family, and above all, the transformative power of love. They had taken a moment of terrible violence and fear and turned it into the beginning of something beautiful and lasting. Their story, like all great love stories, was not perfect. There had been arguments and misunderstandings, moments of frustration and times of sorrow. But at its core was a deep and abiding love that had sustained them through everything life threw their way. They had chosen each other every day for 42 years, and that choice had made all the difference. On quiet mornings when the sun rises over the Oklahoma prairie, casting golden light across the land James and Rebecca once worked together, their presence can still be felt. In the solid craftsmanship of the ranch buildings, in the flowers that bloom in the garden, in the faces of great-great-grandchildren who carry their features and their names, in the stories still told around dinner tables of the teacher and the cowboy whose love story began with a rescue at dawn. It was a life well lived, a love well earned, and a legacy that would endure for generations to come. And it all started because a cowboy chose to investigate a cry for help one October morning in 1882, and in doing so, found not just someone to save, but someone to love for the rest of his life.